It's really hard to overstate just how important Steve Jobs has been to business, to the economy, what he's done, because he's really revolutionized so many businesses.
His biggest impact on business is that he has taught people that the product is all that matters.
What Jobs recognized was that the introduction of the product is your one chance to send a message to the public about what this thing is. And he treated it like a Hollywood premiere.
An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it?
The secrecy and the kind of theater that Apple brings to every product launch, every other company in the world, whether they're in, electronics, consumer electronics, or clothing or automobiles, they can learn from Apple and what they do.
It was a piece of theater, and he treated it like a piece of theater. And he invited the audience. He primed them like you would, like you would send out the trailers for a movie. And then he did a performance, every second of which was carefully choreographed and scripted, and rarely went wrong.
The amazing thing about him is how many businesses he has touched and revolutionized. I mean, everyone knows about the computer business, computer hardware, computer software. Then, of course, there's the music business with iTunes and the iPod. Just amazing, completely transformed that business.
The iPod and the iPod Touch and the iPhone and all the things that are portable music players, on paper they have a 90% share of the market. In fact, they own it. I mean, other people might buy other MP3 players, but they throw them away. If you look at what people are using, they're all using iPads or iPods.
Even though Walkman had existed before MP3 players, it was Apple that came in with the iPod and did it far better than the existing MP3 player manufacturers did, and far better than Sony, the inventor of the Walkman, did.
Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone.
Steve Jobs' influence on the mobile telecommunications space is sort of manyfold. For more than 100 years, telecommunications companies have exercised most of the control in the relationship with their vendors. And Apple came in, and Steve Jobs, as is his way, basically kind of bullied his carrier, in this case AT&T, to saying, you need to create a much more open environment. You need to create an environment in which the user can go anywhere they want to get any kind of information they want. If it happens to be the App Store, all the better for Apple.
Most companies will do a market study and say, well, what do we think the appetite for this product is? What will be the price elasticity? What's the market size? What's the correct way for us to go out and sell it? And Apple has done none of that. Apple says, Steve Jobs says, we think people are going to want an iPhone. We think they're going to want a smartphone that looks beautiful and that does these various things, and we're going to build it. And then we're going to go tell them about it, and then they're going to buy it.
The other thing that happened as a result of Apple coming on the scene is that it really created a competitive environment for mobile phones that had never existed before. Google's Android owes a great debt to Apple's iPhone because suddenly carriers that didn't have the iPhone, like Verizon and T-Mobile and Sprint, were looking for alternatives, looking for new ways to get exciting smartphones in the market.
Would smartphones have evolved without Apple? Sure, of course they would, but we'll never know. I mean, it was Apple that came in and did it better.
People are in awe of Steve Jobs, but they're also scared of him. I think that you hear these stories about people walking around the Apple campus and they're sort of a little bit afraid that they get trapped in the elevator with Steve Jobs. They want to have something to say to him. They want to come off as smart. And he's got no patience for people who don't have the right answers, in his opinion, or who impress him with their brilliance. So there's a little bit of this man is a genius, but they're also afraid of him.
He loves the dramatic gesture. I was giving him a hard time when he first showed us the iPhone because it looked so fragile and slippery. And I said, what's going to happen when I drop it? He said, oh, and he threw it on the floor. And I said, and it didn't break. And I said, yeah, but that's a carpet. What happens if you drop it on concrete? He said, well, buy your own for that.
He would call me up and, yell at me sometimes. Your cell phone would ring and you'd pick it up and there'd be this voice on the other end that would say, Andy, Steve Jobs. And I remember that pause between my name and his name.
By many accounts, he's ruthless. He is a perfectionist. He cares about design, which is a matter of taste. So he's very interested in taste. He has a strong opinion about things that are subjective, the way something should look. And he also has a high degree of confidence that he's right.
What I realized about Steve is that he was just intensely focused on making sure that he and Apple got the best press possible.
They talk about the reality distortion field that surrounds Steve Jobs, and if you get a little too close to him, you start to believe what he tells you. He's a marketer. He's a brilliant marketer, and part of a great salesman is to create the reality in which you just have to have the product that he's selling you.